The STEM Society.
What is going on, everybody? It is your boy Cole Jackson, and I'm back with my top 10 albums of 2024, my top 10 hip hop albums of 2024. I was debating on whether to do in this video. If you follow me on Instagram, which if you want to follow me, there goes my name up there. But I dropped my top 10 list earlier in the week, and I actually decided to go ahead and just give you guys a video to show you guys what I picked for my top 10 list. There's probably going to be some boos. There's going to be some yays. There's going to be some people who are puzzled by some of my decisions. But guess what? It's my list, and I'm going with it. So these are my top 10 hip-hop albums of 2024. So my number 10 album was Vince Staples' Dark Times. This album got a lot of praise from a lot of people. A lot of people really enjoyed what Vince Staples brought to the table this year. Dark, it was introspective, it was mature. This barely made my list, if I'm gonna be honest with y'all. I did not like this album when it initially came out. I just couldn't get with it because everybody was doing very introspective albums at this time. It just came after Rhapsody, if I'm not mistaken. And I was just fed up with it. The more I listened to it, the more I understood why people enjoyed it so much. I mean, he talked about real issues. He got into like the label stuff, how labels exploit people. He just gave some honest opinions in his music about what was going on in his life. I respect that. The content comes from a genuine place, and I'm cool with that, man. I get it. I personally just had too much of that shit this year. In 2024, I just got too much of y'all's lives, and it just really got on my nerves, and I couldn't deal with that shit no more. Vince Staples has a way of coming out with things, and I think people don't take him as serious as they should because he's got this. They got this complex about him saying what's on his mind, but thinking it's super hilarious when he's dead ass. So I think people should take him a lot more serious, and I think that's why we've been getting these darker albums. I said from the very first time I listened to this album, Ramona Park was way better than this, in my opinion, and nobody talked about that album enough. And I can only compare You to You. Ramona Park is so much more of a better album than this is, but I get it, and I kind of respect. I had to give Vince Staples his respect. That's why I put him on the list. So it was just one of them things where I was enjoying the production, the content was very meaningful, and the raps were there. Like, he's not a super lyrical guy, but he gets his statement across about how he raps, and that's why I like Vince Staples so much. The reason why it's just so low on my list, though, the replayability ain't there. At least Ramona Park had a lot more replayable songs and a lot more songs that I could relate to on there. It's just real dark and sad, bruh. And I really, there were days when I enjoyed this album, and there were days when this shit got on my nerves because it's just like, yo, this ain't FM. And I want more FM stuff, but that was pretty much the reason why I have it at number 10. It's just no replayability. Fortunately, we're giving it quite a few listens. I had to make sure it got on my list. So my number 10 album for 2024 is Vince Staples' Dark Times. All right, my number 9 album, Glorilla Glorious. Had to give this to Glorilla. She exceeded expectations this year. This was like her standout year, man. And I think a lot of people was looking at this girl to crash and burn after FNF. But I got to be honest with you. I heard her first mixtape earlier this year called Everything Is Everything. Everything Is Everything had that Memphis sound that I like, bruh. And that was the biggest reason why I enjoyed that album so much. This album is actually more, it's more mainstream. It has a much more of a budget behind it. And you can hear where she actually grew from FNF. Y'all, I know y'all hate to admit this, but Glorilla can actually rap, bruh. She's not a super lyrical genius, but this motherfucker can actually rap. It was great to be able to listen to an album that had solid raps. She had anthems on here, and she also went into a route of doing spiritual stuff. She had a whole gospel song with Kirk Franklin, which I thought was very well made. She actually had a song talking about women being mistreated or abused, which I thought made a whole lot of sense. It was much more than just shaking your ass on here. And that's why I think I took to this album so well. Niggas love Glorilla. I fuck with Glorilla. I think she is one of my favorite rappers of this year. I don't think expectations were super high. When I came to it, I didn't really have super high expectations either. I knew where we were gonna go, but it exceeded what I was looking for, and that's why I enjoyed this album so much. And I've gone back to this album a few times to be able to listen to some of the anthems that's on here. The features were great. I don't think there's another female rapper. Well, it's maybe two other female rappers that had a pretty good year this year, which would be Doechii and Rhapsody. But as far as like an album that I continuously went back to hear some slaps, Glorious was one of them. I just feel like she just did a phenomenal job, and I feel like she knows her lane. She's here to stay. I think she can't do anything else but to grow. Hopefully she don't fall into the trap of becoming like a brand ambassador like some other rappers. And maybe she can continue with the music. I think if you continue to put money behind her and continue to put a budget on her albums, she'll improve. Glorilla made sure she put out one of the more impressive albums because she's still early in the game, but she did impress me with what she dropped this year. So, number 9 on my list, Glorilla Glorious. From my number 8 album, JPEGMafia, I Lay Down My Life For You. Probably one of the most alternative yet brilliant hip-hop albums of 2024. I have been singing the praises of JPEGMafia since last year, maybe even 2022. I kept saying, I talked about the album that he made with Danny Brown, which I thought was phenomenal. That was a great album. JPEGMafia has figured out how to do more of an alt. I can't think of the genre of music, but it's an alt style. And he mixed it with hip hop elements, and it just makes a whole lot of fucking sense, man. The themes in this album are very solid and very good. This motherfucker produced the whole album on his own. He used very creative samples when he was making this album, and that's what I like about it as well. Like when you hear what he infused with the alt sound, the type of samples he infused with the alt sound of the music, everything just fits so well. He does a phenomenal job of being himself and still being hip hop, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like he don't try to be like nobody else. I think he most definitely gets influences from niggas like Tech Nine or something like that. But when you listen to his music, this is all coming from him, and it's his sound. And I like the fact that we get different type of subgenres in hip hop like this. A lot of his content is raw, it's real, it's deeply impactful with some of the messages that he's having, his statements he's making in a lot of these songs. And that's the biggest reason why I enjoyed this album. Artists like JPEGMafia deserve to get more credit for what they're doing with hip hop and how they're coming with their own sound. I always talk about people like him and AC Club and that side of hip hop, Paris, Texas, that side of hip hop, which nobody talks about. But the alt shit is great if you give it a chance and if you're willing to listen to something outside of just like killing and shooting. You know what I'm saying? Or something outside of like selling dope, or something outside of like I'm in the club. Like that's those types of albums we need more of, and we need to give more recognition to. He delivered a top tier project. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He gave us a very quality project. I feel like it's produced very well because he did all the production. I love the fact that he handled everything on his own, and he made sure that we knew it was all about what was going on in his life. I enjoy the fact that he was just really innovative, and he just pushed boundaries. And I don't think we give those types of artists enough credit for what they do. So for him being able to go surpass what the norm is, and for him to be able to put out his own sound and what he enjoys and who he is, I got to give him a lot of credit for that. So my number 8 album was JPEGMafia, I Lay Down My Life For You. So in number 7, I had a tie. I know. Nigga, figure out what you want to put on here and do and make it solid. Stand on business. I had to make it a tie because I enjoyed both of these albums equally, even though they came out at different times of the year. I really love both of these albums, and I could not figure out who I could put at this list. So since it's my list, I decided to make it a tie. So for the first album for number 7, it's Denzel Curry's King of the Mischievous South. We got to start giving Denzel Curry a lot more credit, bro. He has been solid. He has given a solid album since Taboo, which I think came out in 2018, 2019. And he has done very well as far as like albums are concerned. He's been consistent. Everything's been on point, and he fucking loves hip hop. He loves music, and you can tell about the way he puts these projects together. This album specifically has an early 2000 Memphis sound, which I enjoy. He brought out a legend from Memphis named Kingpin Skinny Pimp to do a lot of the interludes. If you don't know who he is, please go look him up. He is from that era of 3-6 Mafia and those boys and that crew. I like the fact that he brought that into today's space. The album is high energy. The album has consistent production all the way through. There's a few skips here and there, but the album is really good, and it just gave me a ton of energy when I listened to it. On top of the fact that he had artists like Mike Dimes, he's one of my favorite artists out of Texas. He had Tia Corrine on here, Mexican OT. He had Ferg on here. Great features that complemented who he is. It complemented the album, and it just was an overall success in my eyes. This man has not put out a bad album since 2018. I challenge anybody to tell me different. Denzel Curry has been so consistent and been so good with what he does. Even though Denzel Curry is not overly lyrical, we still have to give him credit for being able to get his message across and him to be able to stay in his lane and excel in it. And that's something that we don't do, which I hope that we start doing more of. I can't wait to hear the next project that he comes out with. Denzel Curry is one of the most reliable artists we've got in this generation, and he deserves a whole lot of recognition for being great and being able to put out quality music consistently. So with that being said, that's why he is a tie for my number 7 album of 2024. So the other album in my number 7 spot is Ab-Soul Soul Burger. He probably released one of his most digestible albums I've ever heard. Typically when I put out some stuff, man, it usually goes over my head. And for this album, and I hate to say it this way, but it's the only way I can really explain it. He really dumbed down a lot of his lyrics for us to be able to catch up with what he's saying. And I appreciate that because he still, even though he dumbed down his lyrics, his technical style is still like there. Like, it says a lot about an artist when they can dumb shit down and it still sounds very, very good, and it still has like some complex entendres here and there. I've always known Ab-Soul is one of those artists that just tell, like, he raps about shit that if you haven't read or if you don't know about certain things, you'll never know what he's talking about. But this was way better. He didn't lose his depth. He had a lot more appealing, like, production. Like, his production was a lot more West Coast heavy, if that makes any sense. Like, it was kind of like what the sound was this year when you think about the West Coast. He did a phenomenal job with the album, bruh. It came out very, very late in the year. And I know he did this to celebrate his friend's passing, which I think makes it even better. I don't think I can make a list without having this album on here because, 1, it's personal. 2, he is rhyming his ass off. And 3, he actually made it for people who don't really like super deep lyrics, giving us a chance to be able to like enjoy his work. And that's why I enjoyed the album so much. With the West Coast being so dominant here in 2024, he was one of the bigger standouts when you think about West Coast artists and West Coast albums. He just did a solid job, man. You can't take nothing away from this album, man. Soul is one of those people who he can fucking rap and they don't give him credit for it. And I think a lot of times people don't give him credit for it because he's from the West Coast. But Soul is one Solo or Ab-Soul, whatever you want to call him. Soul is one of them dudes, bro, that we love him. We love him quietly, but we don't really talk about how great of a rapper he is in public. And that's got to stop, man. That's got to stop. I think if he would have dropped this album earlier, I think I would have put this higher on my list. But since it came out so late and I didn't want to be prisoner of the moment, I made sure I put it at a decent place. So number 7 felt right. I hope that he comes out with something else. I don't want to wait too much longer before we get one of those. Not to say this wasn't a real album, but I want another Herbert. I want another one of those types of albums again. Herbert was so good and people didn't talk about it enough, but I had to put this on my list at number 7. I had to tie it with Denzel Curry, but if you haven't heard it yet, go out and listen to it. It's Ab Soul Burger. That's my number 7 album. All right, number 6, easy. Doechie's Alligator Bites Never Heal. This was a breakout album that I think a lot of people didn't expect, and it's something that I knew was going to happen. I'm gonna keep bragging about it because I've been on Doechii for a very long time before everybody else was just like, "Oh my gosh, she's incredible." I've been on that train. You niggas are late. This was a showcase of her being versatile. It showed her lyrical depth. I know it felt like TDE gave her a lot of creative control on this album, and they said, "You can just do you, and we'll do the rest." So it's cohesive. It's how can I put it? The album is cohesive. I love the sequence of that album. I love the themes of the songs. She gets personal. She talks about with how it is in the industry. She gives she just gives a lot of great personal stories on this album, and that's one of the reasons why it's so good to me. So you could tell she was using classic hip hop influences and mixing her own unique style with it. And that's what I think drew everybody to her. Now, I know a lot of people are calling it Harriet Tubman music on Twitter, which you niggas are sad hip hop fans if you're doing shit like that. But this album, very unique, personal style. TDE again shows that artist development really works because she has been out for a while, and I think they just kind of groomed her to the point to where like it's just like, all right, you ready? Let's drop this on people and let people know that you coming. Pause. And it worked. She is everywhere. She had a great NPR on Tiny Desk. She's performed at damn near every fucking talk show in the world. She's everywhere. And people don't like it. I don't know why. People have been calling her a plant. I don't know why. This album is great, and you niggas are haters. Y'all are hating on this girl for no apparent reason. She is the hope for female MCs in hip hop, and y'all hate that shit. Everybody ain't got to talk about ass. Everybody ain't got to be a stripper. Everybody ain't got to be doing the same song and dance that all of these motherfuckers y'all like are doing. There are people with depth. There are people out here who actually have stories that they want to tell on their album. Phenomenal stories, by the way. And the reason and the way y'all niggas are going in on this girl, it's fucking comedy. Y'all niggas are lame and whack. This album is great. I can't wait to hear what else what else she's gonna come out with on TDE, especially on TDE. Like TDE has been batting 1,000 this year, and she is one of the examples of showing how when you know what you got and you start working on it and you actually put it, when you actually put it through a little bit of teaching and giving it a little seasoning, you come out with a fucking diamond. So this is a diamond that everybody should be listening to. Doechie's Alligator Bites Never Heal. All right, we're getting into the top 5. And I'm pretty sure for the people who haven't seen this, it's probably going to be some surprises. Probably going to be a lot of y'all hating, whatever. Number 5, Future's We Don't Trust You. I wish I could have put it higher. Man. I love this album. This is Future staying in his toxic lane, but this was the beginning of him dominating 2024. And I know a lot of y'all gonna be like, hey, hold up, man, dominating. He was dominating 2024. 3 albums he dropped went number 1. That motherfucker put out some solid albums. They were very consistent. He did what he had to do to be successful in 2024. I'm not taking anything away from Kendrick, but let me just say this. If that Kendrick-Drake beef never happens, Future's MVP of 2024. Say whatever you want to say. He is the MVP of 2024 if Kendrick never drops this year. And a lot of people just be like, man, like, what you talking about, man? He ain't lyrical. The thing about Future that people seem to forget or don't understand is he knows his lane, he stays in his lane, and he does what he does very well in that lane. Ain't another nigga doing this type of music. The only motherfucker I can't think of another person that could do it like him. You can't. Future is that nigga. When it comes to this type of music, nobody's touching him. Nobody. Until he retires, I don't think it's anybody that will be able to do what he's doing. And that motherfucker did it on an elite level this year. Future dropped an album full of bangers outside of Like That, which you niggas continue to fucking dick ride on a regular basis. Cinderella, Run Out of Time, Everyday Hustle. Just to name a few. Just to name a few. This nigga had bangers on here, bruh. Like, Metro Boomin got it in his fucking bag. Metro Boomin killed the production on here. These niggas linked up to make one of 2024's best albums. Say what y'all want to. I know y'all be looking for lyrics, but y'all be lying when y'all say that shit. I wish I could put it higher, but the only thing that really holds this album back from being number one or top three or whatever the case may be is it's an album for the anthems. You know what I'm saying? It's an album for the slime. It's an album for the toxic shit. Like, that's good for oh so much, but he does it at such a great level, and he does it at such a fucking just top tier shit, bruh. I'm pretty sure a lot of y'all don't have We Don't Trust You in y'all's top five. I think a lot of y'all people really talk down on this album, but there's nobody doing it like Future. Even though he's not the best lyricist in the world, that nigga's one of the better artists that we've had in the last 10, 15 years. You can look back at his catalog and you can tell that this nigga puts in a lot of work, and this album is no exception. So that's why I had to have Future's We Don't Trust You at number 5. My number 4 album of 2024, J. Cole's Might Delete Later. I don't know how an album with very little promotion can stay stuck in my mind all year long. J. Cole dropped this album. J. Cole did a little bit of a rollout because he dropped, I think it was Crocodile Tears. Like, he dropped the first half of Crocodile Tears, and that was like the lead in, or that was like the rollout to this album. And then the album came out, and we had a whole situation where he had the Kendrick Lamar diss song on there. He apologized. He took the song off the album and went on about his business. And we shunned him for it, even though we did not talk enough about how good this album is. We were so hung up on the Drake Kendrick shit and him apologizing that we didn't realize that this nigga put together an album that was basically a lyrical exercise to show you niggas that he's still the man when it comes to rapping. I know a lot of y'all might feel differently. I know a lot of y'all probably in your feelings, but this album is him flexing his lyrical muscle consistently throughout the album. Say what y'all want to about him, ducking out of a damn beef or whatever the case may be. This nigga can fucking rap. This album flew under the radar for a long time. Now, it did get nominated for a Grammy, and I think that's phenomenal. That's great, but Cole had to kind of check y'all a little bit and let y'all know, like, I can still do this at a high level without being a feature. And that's what I enjoyed about this album the most. He showed you niggas that I'm still that dude. Some of my favorite songs off the album, which kind of shows his lyrical prowess, was like Crocodile Tears, HYB, Sticks and Stones, 3001. But my personal favorite and my standout track and my favorite song the whole year was Pie. J. Cole, Daylight, and Ab-Soul put together a masterpiece of lyrics, great production, and niggas just going crazy on a song. Lyrically, that is one of my favorite songs of the year. I listen to that song at least 3 times a month all year long since the album had came out. And I don't think people really realize how can I put it? I don't think people realize how great it was to hear Daylight, Ab-Soul, and J. Cole together. Like, them niggas is so lyrical. And it's so many layers to that song, and there was so much going on that song. And they showed, for J. Cole to show that he was able to hang with both of them too, come on, bruh. Come on, man. I'm sorry. He held his own on that song, and that song alone just makes me understand that he was on a totally different wave or different thought pattern when he made this album. He was just trying to remind y'all, I am J. Cole. I can still do this. I don't know what the fall off is going to look like, but if he's doing this and he's actually moving it up a level, probably going to be one of the greatest albums he's ever put out. The fall off is probably going to be his classic. This right here is the warm up before we get the classic album that we've been asking for from J. Cole. So I had to give this album my number 4 because I just played it so much. It stayed in my rotation all year. I had to do it. So number 4, J. Cole, Might Delete Later. Number 3 album, Kendrick Lamar, GNX. This album popped up on a lot of people's as number 1, and I say those people were a prisoner of the moment. I love this album. I think this is very deeply rooted in West Coast. We ain't heard Kendrick be this West Coast since Good Kid, Mad City. I think he blended a lot of classic LA tropes or LA sounds, and he used a lot of what he's been doing this whole year, which is forward thinking raps or just his lyrical prowess, and infused the motherfuckers together. We got GNX. I think a lot of people would look at me putting this at number 3 and just kind of looking like, why didn't you put this at number 1? The reason why I couldn't put it at number 1 is because I think this is more of a moment than it is something that's everlasting. I think the way Kendrick addressed a lot of things that have been happening in his life currently, coming after this album is coming after the beef, still addressing some of the beef that he had going on. It's just way too current. And I think I said in my write-up, I don't know if we'll be listening to this album like we listened to Good Kid, Mad City. Like, if you wait 5 more years, do you think that we'll be listening to GNX like we listen to Good Kid, Mad City? Like, I don't think so. I just feel like this is something for this time, and I think he just took advantage of how everybody, him getting new listeners, him finding new fans, him being so fucking popular this year. And I think he just took advantage of that with this album. This album just sounds so current, and it just sounds so in the moment that it's not going to go past the next 5 years. That's just my opinion. I could be wrong, and if I am wrong, in 5 more years, you can have a conversation with me, and we can figure that shit out. This is not a classic to me when I think about Kendrick Lamar albums. It's not the worst, but it ain't Section 80. It ain't Damn. It ain't Good Kid, Mad City. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's going to take me a little while to figure out where this really ranks in Kendrick's discography. I love the album. He has great songs on there. I love the fact that he goes back to, he calls back to people like Nas with Man in the Garden. That is most definitely a one mic tribute to me. I like the fact that he calls back to Pac on several different occasions. He took the song Reincarnated. He has a song called Reincarnated where he took an old Tupac beat, but there's a couple of references here and there where he is referencing Tupac. I love that kind of shit. I love that. Kendrick really took time out to address what's going on and let y'all know everything is what it is. And that's why I feel like it is the 3rd best album. And plus, again, I'll say it one more time. People putting this at that number 1, they're being prisoners of the moment right now. I guarantee you, half of y'all won't even be putting this in the top 3 of his discography in the next 5 years. I'm telling you what I know. I do want to say it does have a lot of great replayability with a lot of songs. It does have a really good, like, the production is really, really well done on here too. I love the fact that he got some new people, some new West Coast rappers on here as well, just giving them a shot to be heard and giving them an opportunity. I like all of that shit. That's great. It had a great impact. It kind of put a bow on an already great 2024 for him. But putting it higher than 3 didn't feel right. I'll be honest with y'all. I wasn't really going to put it higher than, it was actually going to be number 5. But when I listened to that album compared to like Might Delete Later and Future's album, that wouldn't have been right. Like, when comparing those albums, it's just something about Kendrick's, what he did with his album. I couldn't put him at 5, but I couldn't put him at 1 either. It is a product of his time, and I think it'll be that way in the 5 years. I'm pretty sure we're going to look back and this album is going to be a product of its time when we think about it in 5 more years. But anyway, so my number 3 album for 2024 is Kendrick Lamar's GNX. My number 2 album of 2024 is Schoolboy Q's Blue Lips. Man, look, this was my number 1 album throughout the whole year. I played the hell out of this album. This is Schoolboy's best album he's ever made. My opinion. This is Schoolboy Q's best album. It just showed a lot of growth as an artist on here. It showed him being experimental with the production. Like, this album really had a lot of chaotic production. Like, the beat, the songs go everywhere. The sequencing is crazy. But I think it was purposeful because he did that on purpose because the album goes all over the place. Like, he's up and down on this album emotionally with some of the things that he's talking about. So I guess the production had to match what the theme of the album was. It does feel like one of his most personal albums to date. He has a lot of emotions going on in here, and he does talk about a lot of life experiences on this album. I always go to this to Thank God For Me. Thank God For Me is probably one of the most personal songs I've listened to, and that song got me through a lot this year. That song got me through a lot of bad days, and it just resonates with me so much because it's just like I felt like I was going through the same shit he was going through. And I don't know. I never thought, I would never think that there's somebody like Schoolboy Q who, when you look at his discography, has touched on things here and there, but never this deep and this good. It just felt like he put a lot of himself in this album, and that's what I love about it. Not taking away from his discography, but he put a lot of himself in this album, bro, and I really respect that. And that's why I kept it as my number 1 so much, because I just didn't think Schoolboy Q had it in him to do this. And he proved me wrong, completely wrong. I love the fact that he had people like Ab-Soul, Rico Nasty, and especially Freddie Gibbs. Freddie Gibbs had one of the best verses this year that came off of that album. Freddie Gibbs was rapping his ass off. And I love the fact that he did it on Schoolboy Q's, on the Ohio song. I'm glad that he did it on that album. It just, everything about it, bro. Like, I've really, really enjoyed it. It just spoke to me. The album spoke to me, bro. It really just spoke to me. I think a lot of the features complimented him more on here than anything else. It just showed his skills to be able to work with other artists of that caliber. Like, I really think that, he personally picked a lot of these people for specific reasons and what they meant to a lot of these songs. And maybe I'm just digging too deep into it, but I don't know, man. Everything about this album worked. Everything. And the thing is, the shit that ain't not supposed to work, it worked. I'm a big stickler for sequencing. I am a big stickler for shit sounding cohesive. This is not a cohesive album by any means. And if anybody else would have did this shit, I would have just talked shit about it and would have kept it away. But I think the more of the personal stuff that he talked about, and just the way he approached the album, to me, it stuck with me. It stuck with me throughout the whole year. So with that balance of chaos, but having personal themes and it being experimental, there was no other choice. I had to make it my number 2 album of 2024. All right, we're here. Number 1. And this actually surprised me because when I looked at my list, I didn't think I was going to do it this way. I didn't think this was going to happen, but it did. My number 1 album for 2024, Tyler, the Creator's Cornucopia. Tyler found a way to give us an album that talks about being an adult, personal responsibilities, cultural commentary, and still was his same goofy, playful self. I know that sounds weird, but that's the truth. He had so many different themes in this album and still stayed true to like his sound and who he is. And this nigga has slaps on there. I ain't gonna hold it. This nigga has some slaps on this album. How do you do all of those things and still have slaps? Because most people can't balance that shit the fuck out. Can't do it. It felt more like Tyler was celebrating hip hop or celebrating music in general. You can hear his love for music by this nigga had odes or tributes to certain songs inside the songs when you listen to it. Like, it's like, oh, he did this beat, or he felt like he flipped something, or he sampled this. Tyler is a music nerd, and that's what I like about him and this album. And it just felt like he just wanted to give us a labor of love. It's, how can I put it? Like, he seriously respects hip hop. He knows music. This album, the way it's put together, the features, the nods to certain songs on this album, is him giving us a love letter to hip hop. I thought the sequencing was great. The transitioning from certain songs to other songs, fucking phenomenal. It felt like it was a journey. We were learning so much shit. He was telling personal stories that I never thought Tyler would tell. And he was working with artists I didn't think he was going to work with. He had Sexy Red, Glorilla on this album. Daniel Caesar was on here. Doechii, Lil Wayne. Think about these people I just named, and they're rapping with Tyler, the Creator. That don't happen. That doesn't work. That's not supposed to work, and it worked. He figured out a way to make it work. We don't get this type of artistry from a lot of artists anymore. And I think this type of shit should be celebrated a whole lot more than what it is. It had a lot of depth. It had a lot of heavy subjects that he had to tackle. Was it super lyrical? Not necessarily. But the point got across. I could listen to it. When this album dropped, I listened to the album every day until Kendrick dropped GNX. But I was listening to that album every day because sonically it was so good. It just felt good. It felt like an album that I had to listen to on every day. It just felt like something I had to listen to on a regular basis. This is one of those albums where it's just, you can put it on in the background and it feels like comfort food, if that makes sense. It just feels like it's something that just comforts you through whatever you're working on. I would just throw this shit on in the background and work on shit and just find myself not skipping any song on there. And it's such a the album has so many smooth transitions into other songs. You never really notice how deep into the album you are until you look at the track list. I don't play it on shuffle because it doesn't work. When I try to play it on shuffle, it don't work that way. He has a formula on this album that proves that you have to listen to it in a certain sequence. And I completely enjoy that shit. I love that shit. So everything from like the lyrics, the features, the sound, his personal shit that he was going through, all of that shit in this album worked, and it made it an impeccable body of work. I don't know what else I can say about this shit to compliment it. I know a lot of people will be like, you glazing it, but this was really one of the best albums that came out in 2024. Tyler, Creator, deserves a round of applause. I wish this nigga could get nominated for a Grammy. Hopefully he can get nominated for a Grammy next year. This was just one of the most solid, most consistent, and one of the best sounding albums that I've heard this year. And that is why Tyler, the Creator's Cornucopia is my best hip hop album of 2024. So it seems like this year was an incredible year for hip hop. There were a lot of surprises. There are a lot of things that flew up under the radar. We got probably one of the biggest beefs in hip hop history that did not disappoint. The genre was very well represented this year, and I think we should celebrate this year. It might be a few people out there who are naysayers are just like, whatever, I didn't like it. Whatever however you want to feel, that's how you feel. But for me, 2024 was a very, very strong hip hop year. I don't know how many more years we're going to have like this. even though we had a beef or a battle, rap battle, we still got quality music. My top 10 list was completely different 2 months ago. Hell, it was completely different 2 weeks ago. And just going back and re-listening to a lot of these albums and having to kind of figure out where I was going to rank this shit, probably one of the hardest years I had to do this. And I damn near do one every year. But I'm very thankful for everybody who supported this channel and everybody who supported my list and everybody who's watching right now. Thank you guys for a great year. I'm so appreciative of us having such a strong year in hip hop. I'm very thankful that we had a variety of music more than what we have on typical years. And I'm glad for the people who are real fans who enjoyed the music just like I did. So I'll have the list in my description. Make sure you guys comment on it if you enjoyed my list, if you hated my list, what was missing from my list. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace out.
Thank you for joining the STEM Society.